Today I'm here to answer one question for you guys. Is Watch Dogs 2 worth your investment? I'm recording all the gameplay on my Sony PlayStation 4 using an Elgato HD60 capture card, and I am recording it at 1080p, 60 frames a second. The game obviously does not support 60 frames a second. It barely records 30. My point is that there is in no way any hardware issues behind what I'm showing you guys right now. I'm standing on a bridge, and I picked this particular spot because I wanted to talk to you guys briefly about draw distance and something that this game has a very hard time maintaining, that being a solid frame rate. One of the things game developers will do is reduce draw distance. Obviously, that makes sense. The less assets that are on the screen, the more frame rate you're going to get from the things that are on the screen. It's less to process. I want you guys to focus on the rightmost lane coming towards me, so that'd be the fastest lane if you were driving. You'll notice that cars phase in and out of existence. This is something that we first saw with the Assassin's Creed Unity game, and it received major criticism to the point that assets were actually changing in front of you. So you would walk up into a crowd of people that looked like it was maybe two guys, and as you got close, one of the guys would magically transform into a woman. Needless to say, it was very visually jarring, and it was very embarrassing. That is where the whole Ubisoft no-face bug came from. When those assets were switching, sometimes the game got confused and just didn't draw any assets at all. And while they have gotten a little bit better at disguising it, it still does exist. You'll notice that cars phase in and out. Sometimes they reappear as different vehicles. Sometimes they don't reappear at all. You'll notice that a semi-truck drives by, and when it disappears, it reappears as a white SUV. Or a red car will vanish and appear as a blue truck. Now, this is just standing still. This is about as pretty as you can make it with a solid frame rate because I'm not really doing anything. This is just the in-game world being the in-game world. I'm just standing here waiting to see what happens. Keep in mind, when you start driving, when you start interacting, other than your character model just standing there looking at the camera in selfie mode, you are going to be drawing some of that processing power, and you're going to be taking away from some of the frame rate that is already hard to maintain. And for that reason, I caution you guys, this game is not very stable, and there are a lot of frame rate issues. I haven't seen people talk about it in the way that I'm expressing it to you now, where things phase in and out, drawing a comparison to what was a significant problem on Assassin's Creed Unity. That's why I'm doing this video for you guys now. A lot of the reviewers are not talking about this. And for the people that say, oh, you're being a PC Master Race snob, yes, it's going to look better on PC, but I thoroughly enjoyed the original Watch Dogs on my PlayStation 4, and I did not experience the significant amount of issues there as I am noticing here. So we're going to go ahead and jump in the car now. We're going to go for a drive, and I want you guys to look in the horizon, and I want you guys to notice the frame rate and the popping that occurs as a result of the draw distance being reduced to assets having to appear in front of your very eyes. You'll notice that in the horizon with buildings. You'll notice that with roadway signs. You'll notice that with the details on cars. And that is something that's really, really frustrating to me because you're going to spend a significant amount of time in this game in a vehicle. It is a very large open world. And yes, there are some fast travel locations where it may make sense for you to fast travel from point to point. But a lot of the world is meant to be explored. Obviously, there's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of hidden quests and objectives and collectibles and that sort of thing that is out in the world for you to go discover. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting in a car and driving around. So you're going to spend a lot of time in a vehicle. When you are walking around, and at the very end of the video, I do have just a snippet of some of the parkour, you'll see that it is significantly more fluid. And unless you want to run anywhere in the city, you're going to run into these issues on your console, and I want you guys to be aware of this. Again, this is on the PlayStation 4, which is slightly more powerful than the Xbox One, but not by a whole lot. Doesn't really matter. The point is, it's not going to look good on a console. You're noticing cars pop in the distance, coming towards me on traffic and heading towards traffic. And you're also noticing cars are slowly phasing in and out, as particularly coming towards us. And In the horizon, you're noticing probably some of the pop-ins that are occurring. There's definitely some frame rate stutters. And this isn't doing anything. This isn't hacking anything. This isn't manipulating cars to turn and cause explosions. This isn't blowing up underground steam pipes to create steam. This isn't creating any sort of havoc whatsoever. This is just me traversing in a vehicle, doing my best not to hit anybody, doing my best just to drive, which is about the least strenuous you can be on this system, is what I'm doing right now. And again, that is a shame because this world is very detailed, and at still photos and just walking around and admiring things, trying to ignore the very unreliable frame rate, they have done a great job of making this world feel alive and making it feel real. You'll notice that there are working stoplights and stop signs and speed limits and working light cycles in a day and night mode. I switched to that here. You'll see that in a second. The world looks and is detailed very, very well. But for every second that you're in ooh and awe over something, you're going to get something like this. Look at my instrument panel. It does not move. It's a static image. This is something that was fixed on Battlefield 4 like 4 or 5 years ago, where the gauges actually moved in your car. I don't know why a next generation game that has given up on the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, the current generation, why we can't have details like this. The mirrors don't work at all. I'm not going to beat them up too much on that. A lot of driving games do not have working mirrors. This one is no different. They just have this canned reflective image. You'll see me pan over a few times. You can see what I'm talking about. It's not even realistic to what you're seeing. It's just kind of like default reflection. Ubisoft is notorious for doing this. You've seen this in a lot of their games where you look at a reflection, and if you actually look at what's going on, it doesn't match the outside world, and it's typically a static image. So you got to keep that in mind as well. And again, I mean, I just accidentally pulled out my weapon there. I'm not doing anything other than driving around, and it's frustrating that some of this detail that is so pretty in a static state can't be admired in motion. And now you're going to see I'm doing a little bit of havoc there. There's some police chasing me here and there. You'll see some of the lighting effects, which are gorgeous. They really are. The way that when it rains, the way the roads reflect and gather water, and the way that there's sparks, and the way that your car shifts in its weight and its momentum when you're driving around, the way the exhaust pipes backfire and shoot out small plumes of fire and a little bit of smoke. It's really, really pretty. But you're going to constantly come back to this jarring, really poor frame rate. And I think that's what I really want to stress in this, that the frame rate is what's really going to hurt your head. And the popping of assets over time, you're going to realize how bad it is. And it does get worse the longer you play. I've noticed that when you first launch the game, it seems to be a little bit better. But as time goes on, it gets progressively worse. This reminds me a lot of, if you guys remember playing Oblivion back in the day, how you had to reset your cache on your Xbox One by holding down the A button. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. But it reminds me of that, where as the game runs longer, it starts to look worse and worse, and it begins to chug more and more. It's almost as if it isn't doing a good job of cleaning up after itself. I don't know what the frame rate is here, but I have to guess at some instances it probably drops down to 18 to 20 FPS, which in a game that is locked at 30, or supposed to be locked at 30, clearly is not meeting that mark. Another thing you'll notice, some of the screen tearing and some of the bogging down, especially in the more volume, the more busy parts of town, a lot more volume. You'll notice that when you're passing by some palm trees with train tracks, and especially when there's gang wars or a lot of police are chasing you with a lot of lights and sound effects, helicopters coming after you, you'll notice the game starts to tear significantly when you make sharp turns, which you're going to have to do if you want to avoid the police, because these guys are relentless. And again, for all the beautiful detail that you're seeing in the working, the way that the trees are in the road and the stoplights and all the attention they've done to every little cobblestone, take a look at the way that the rims look when you're driving. You'll see that the rims even are at a slow frame rate. I don't know why they did that. It looks like they're broken the way that they spin. It's very, very, very odd. So tricks and that sort of thing, and these little cheats that developers are going to do because they only have so much real estate to work with, because the consoles are only so powerful. And I understand that. But at the same time, you have to make a game stable, and you have to make it fun for players. I think they've nailed the fun factor. I think they've nailed some of the physics models. Take a look at the explosion here. You'll notice all the particles blowing out of the top. The smoke is translucent up at the top, and it's a little more dense at the bottom. It looks really, really good. And in a still image where you're parking your cop car in the middle of the street doing nothing but watching that, it's gorgeous. And that's the kind of footage that they're showing right now in the commercials and in the advertisements. But again, for everything like that, you look at something like this and you notice some of the graphical limitations of this game. And it does hinder your experience, particularly when you're playing online, particularly when you're hacking other people. The game has a hard time keeping up, and you end up getting a lot of rubber banding, and you end up getting a lot of these really weird graphical spikes. Not so much latency where you're snapping back in time, and that is a sense of rubber banding, but more in the sense that the game almost can't keep up from a graphical perspective. And what ends up happening is everything almost does this like fast forward, almost like a flash forward. And artifacts tear and rip, and refresh rates start to really, really affect your gameplay. And you'll notice this when you're playing with other people. You'll notice it most then. When you're in an environment where you're doing a co-op mission, where you're doing some sort of hacking mission, it's very easy to spot people. If you guys remember the hacking minigame in Watch Dogs 1, it makes its appearance here in Watch Dogs 2. And you'll notice it's very easy to determine who everybody is, because they walk very jerky, and because the game has a very hard time processing them. So I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of the parkour. I thought that system worked very, very well. It was very fluid. I felt like I was in total control. I'm running through a restricted area, so people are going to start shooting at me. I just run through here. But you see, all I'm doing is holding down the right trigger and running, and my character is doing the rest. He's jumping and flipping in a totally vibrant, fleshed out world. You'll watch and hack people's conversations. You'll oversee people doing selfies. You'll oversee people working on their car on the side of the road. They've done an amazing job of making this world feel real, and I don't think you're ever going to walk through it and feel like you're in a video game, because there are so many things you are going to notice. The small talk you hear, people complaining about their jobs, people doing goofy things, people talking and walking down the street, people getting in car wrecks. Everything that you would expect. I mean, it does an amazing job of that life simulation, and it really does make the world fun, and it really does make your decisions a little bit more meaningful, because you are a character in this world that they've done such a great job of fleshing out. However, again, there are a lot of physical limitations, particularly with graphics, particularly with draw distance. That's why I say I do not recommend you buy this game right now. See if they can fix the frame rate. If in a month or two the frame rate's solid and you're like, man, I don't know what this guy was talking about, well, good. That means they've fixed it. But they did not fix it in Unity. They did not fix it in Syndicate. And based on everything I'm seeing now, they have not fixed it now. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there, play some games. Let me know what you think about Watch Dogs. Am I way off base? And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.